During the early years of the American Civil War, the Confederate Navy, emboldened by the responding success of the CSS Virginia at Hampton Roads, sought to replicate this ironclad advantage in the North Carolina Sounds. This strategically vital waterway was controlled by Union gunboats, enabling them to support ground forces and maintain a stranglehold on the region. To counter this, the Confederate Naval Department, on the 16th of April in 1862, contracted with the remarkable young Lieutenant Gilbert Elliott to oversee the construction of a powerful ram. Recognizing the vulnerability of a traditional shipyard to Union attack, Elliott, with the assistance of local plantation owner Peter Smith, ingeniously chose a secluded location for construction, a cornfield along the Roanoke River near Edwards Ferry. A site inaccessible to Union gunboats due to the shallow water, this clandestine shipyard, established under Smith's supervision, became the birthplace of a formidable ironclad. Elliott, a visionary for his age, provided preliminary designs, which were then refined by the Confederate Navy's chief constructor, John L. Porter. The resulting design called for a casemate ironclad, a vessel with a heavily armored central structure with a length of 158 feet, a beam of 35.4 feet, and a draught of 9 feet. The casemate, also known as the iron box, would house two powerful 6.4-inch Broke pivot rifles, each mounted on pivots and capable of firing from multiple positions. To protect these formidable weapons, Porter incorporated 6 heavy iron shutters that could be closed to shield the guns from enemy fire. The two 6.4-inch Broke rifles were powerful rifled cannons, a significant technological advancement for the Confederacy. The Broke rifles were known for their accuracy and long range due to the rifling in their barrel, which imparted spin to the projectiles. The exact cannons on the Albemarle were likely sourced from the Treadgear Iron Works in Richmond, Virginia, a major Confederate arms manufacturer. They were mounted on pivots within the armored casemate, allowing for a wide arc of fire. Each cannon could be fired from multiple positions, enhancing the ship's offensive capabilities. To protect these guns, heavy iron shutters were installed, shielding them from enemy fire when not in use. These guns were designed to be able to fire multiple different types of ammunition. These included solid shot, explosive shot, canister shot, as well as grape shot, each one with their own special use. The ship's primary defense was this thick iron armor plating, which protected the vital areas of the ship, including the casemate and machinery. However, another thing that also helped this ship was that her hull would sit low in the water, meaning that it was harder to hit and therefore would not require as much armor as would a normal ship. The ship was also equipped with a powerful ram at its bow, a tactic effectively employed by the CSS Virginia at Hampton Roads. This allowed the Albemarle to inflict significant damage by ramming enemy vessels, as she would do on the Roanoke River when she would ram and sink the Union ship USS Southfield. Propulsion would be provided by two screw propellers, driven by two 200 horsepower steam engines, a testament to Confederate ingenuity in naval engineering. These engines were likely non-condensing steam engines, a common type used in steamboats and early ironclads during the Civil War. Non-condensing engines are simpler in design and less complex to maintain, making them suitable for wartime production and operation. The engines were powered by two boilers that generated the steam necessary to drive the propellers. The types of boilers used on the Albemarle is not definitively known, but likely resemble those commonly employed in steamboats of the era. The use of twin screws offered several advantages, including maneuverability as well as redundancy. However, there was the challenge of maintenance, considering maintaining the engines and boilers would have presented challenges, especially in the field conditions of wartime, as well as a limitation in speed, as the Albemarle was not designed to be operated at high speeds, but rather to be operated in the close confines of the North Carolina Sounds, and to engage in close-range combat with Union warships. Construction would commence in January of 1863, shrouded in secrecy. News of this clandestine project would inevitably reach Union intelligence, and prompted alarm among naval commanders in the region. Recognizing the potential threat, they implored the War Department to authorize a land-based assault to destroy the ironclad while she was being built. However, the Union Army, grappling with its own strategic priorities, deemed such a diversion of resources unfeasible. This decision would prove to be a grave miscalculation, as the 158-foot CSS Albemarle, as the ironclad was christened, would soon wreak havoc on Union forces in the region. In April of 1864, the newly commissioned Albemarle, under the command of Captain James W. Cook, got underway downriver towards Plymouth, North Carolina. Its mission was to clear the river of all Union vessels so that General Robert F. Holt's ground forces could storm the forts located there. He anchored about 3 miles above the town, and the pilot, John Locke, set off with 2 seamen in a small boat to take soundings. The river was high, and they discovered 10 feet of water over the obstructions that the Union forces had placed in the thoroughfare gap. Captain Cook immediately ordered steam, and by keeping to the middle of the river, they passed safely over the obstructions. The ironclad's armor protected them from Union guns of the forts at Warren's Neck and Boyle's Mill. However, 2 paddle steamers, USS Miami and USS Southfield, lashed together with spars and chains, approached from upriver, attempting to pass on either side of the Albemarle in order to trap her between them. Captain Cook turned heavily to starboard, getting outboard of Southfield, but running dangerously close to the southern shore. Turning back sharply into the river, he rammed the Union sidewheeler, driving her under. Albemarle's ram became trapped in Southfield's hull from the force of the blow, and her bow was pulled under as well. As the Southfield sank, she rolled over before settling on the riverbed. This action released the death grip that held the new Confederate ram. Miami would fire a shell into Albemarle at point-blank range, while she was trapped by the wreck of Southfield, but the shell would rebound off of Albemarle's sloping iron armor and would explode on the Miami, killing her commanding officer, Captain Charles W. Flusher. Miami's crew attempted to board Albemarle to capture her, but were soon driven back by heavy musket fire. Miami then steered clear of the ironclad and escaped into the Albemarle Sound. With the river now clear of Union ships, and with the assistance of Albemarle's rifled cannons, General Hoke attacked and took Plymouth and the nearby forts. On the 5th of May, Albemarle and CSS Bombshell, a captured steamer, were escorting the troop-laden CSS Cotton Plant down the Roanoke River, when they encountered a flotilla of 8 Union warships, including the USS Miami, the USS Mattabesset, the USS Sassacus, and the USS Wyalusing, in what would become known as the Battle of Albemarle Sound. All 4 of the listed ships combined mounted more than 60 cannons. Albemarle opened first shot, wounding 6 men, working one of the Mattabesset's 2 100-pound Parrott rifles, and then attempted to ram her, but the sidewheeler managed to round the ironclad's armored bow. She was closely followed by the Sassacus, which then fired a broadside of solid 9-inch, 229mm, and 100-pound shot, all of which bounced off Albemarle's casemate armor. However, Bombshell, being a softer target, was hauled by each heavy shot from Sassacus's broadside and was quickly captured by Union forces, following her surrender. Lieutenant Commander Francis Asbury Roe of the Sassacus, seeing Albemarle at a range of about 400 yards, decided to attempt a ram. The Union ship would strike the Confederate ironclad full and square, broadside on, shattering the timbers of her own bow, twisting off her own bronze ram in the process, and jamming both ships together. With the hull of the Sassacus almost touching the end of the ram's Brooke rifle, Albemarle's gun crew quickly fired two point-blank rifled shells, one of them puncturing the Sassacus's boilers. Though live steam was roaring throughout the ship, the Sassacus was able to break away and drift out of range. The Miami would then first try to use her spar torpedo, and then to tangle the Confederate ram's screw propellers and rudder with a net, but neither ploy succeeded. More than 500 rounds were fired at the Albemarle during the battle, with visible battle damage to her smokestack and other areas on the ironclad. She steamed back up the Roanoke, soon mooring at Plymouth. The Albemarle successfully dominated the Roanoke and the approaches to Plymouth through the summer of 1864. By autumn, the United States government decided that the situation should be studied to determine if something could be done. The United States Navy considered various ways to destroy the Albemarle, including two plans submitted by Lieutenant William B. Cushing. They finally approved one of Cushing's plans, authorizing him to locate two small steam launches that might be fitted with spar torpedoes. Cushing discovered two 30-foot picket boats under construction in New York and acquired them for his mission. On each he mounted a Dahlgren 12-pounder howitzer and a 14-foot spar projecting into the water from its bow. One of the boats was lost at sea during the voyage from New York to Norfolk, Virginia, but the other arrived safely with its crew of 7 officers and men at the mouth of the Roanoke. There, the steam launch's spar was fitted with a lanyard-detonated torpedo. On the night of October 27th and 28th, in 1864, Cushing and his team began working their way upriver. A small cutter would accompany them, its crew having the task of preventing interference by the Confederate sentries stationed on a schooner anchored to the wreck of the Southfield. Both boats, under the cover of darkness, slipped past the schooner undetected. So Cushing decided to use all 22 of his men and the element of surprise to capture the Albemarle. However, as they approached the Confederate docks, their luck would turn, and they were spotted in the dark. They came under heavy rifle and pistol fire from both the shore and aboard Albemarle. As they closed with the ironclad, they quickly discovered she was defended against approach by floating log booms. These logs, however, had been in the water for many months, and were covered with heavy slime. The steam launch rode up and then over them without difficulty, with her spar fully against the ironclad's hull. Cushing stood up in the bow and pulled the lanyard, detonating the torpedo's explosive charge. The explosion threw Cushing and his men overboard into the water. Cushing then stripped off most of his uniform and swam to shore, where he hid under cover until daylight, avoiding the hastily organized Confederate search parties. The next afternoon, he was finally able to steal a small skiff and began slowly paddling using his hands and arms as oars, downriver to rejoin Union forces at the river's mouth. Cushing's long journey was quite perilous, and he was nearly captured and almost drowned before finally reaching safety. Totally exhausted by his ordeal, he was hailed a national hero of the Union because of his daring exploits. Of the other men in Cushing's launch, one man, Seaman Edward Houghton, also escaped. 2 others, John Woodsman and fireman Samuel Higgs, were drowned following the explosion, and the remaining 11 were captured. Cushing's daring commando raid blew a hole in Albemarle's hull at the waterline, big enough to drive a wagon in. She sank immediately and the 6 feet of water below her keel, settling into the heavy river bottom mud, leaving the upper casemate mostly dry and the ship's large stainless banner ensign flying from the flagstaff at the rear of the casemate's upper deck. Confederate Commander Alexander F. Worley, who had been appointed as her captain about a month earlier, later salvaged both of the Albemarle's rifled cannons and shells and used them to defend Plymouth against subsequent Union attacks. Lieutenant Cushing's successful effort to neutralize the CSS Albemarle is honored by the United States Navy with a battle star on the Civil War campaign streamer. After the fall of Plymouth, the United States Navy raised and temporarily hull patched the Confederate ram. Near the end of the war, the Union gunboat, USS Southfield, towed the Albemarle to the Norfolk Navy Yard, where she arrived on the 27th of April in 1865. On the 7th of June, orders were issued to repair her hull, and she entered dry dock soon thereafter. The work was completed on the 14th of August of the same year, but 2 weeks later, the ironclad was judged condemned by the Washington, D.C. Prize Court. She saw no active naval service after being placed in ordinary service at Norfolk, where she remained until she was finally sold at public auction on the 15th of October in 1867 to the J. N. Leonard and Company, where she was most likely scrapped for salvage. One of her 6.4-inch double-banded Burke rifle cannons is on display at the headquarters of the Commander U.S. Fleet Force Command at Norfolk, Virginia Naval Base. Her smokestack is on display at the Museum of Albemarle in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Her ship's bell is also on display at the Port of Plymouth Museum in Plymouth, North Carolina. A 3/8 scale, 63-foot replica of the Albemarle has also been at anchor near the Port of Plymouth Museum since April of 2002. The replica is self-powered and capable of sailing on the river. Each year, the replica takes to the water during Living History Weekend in the last weekend of April. With that, I thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and perhaps leaving a comment below. The CSS Albemarle, in most aspects, is not a widely known warship, and for the aspect of what she did during her career, I think it is more than valid to say that for the short history that she did have, she does deserve credit for what she did. In the end, again, I thank you all for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one.